At my daughter's 8th birthday, my brother announced he got into Harvard. Then they turned it into his party, while my 8-year-old was made to rub frosting off the floor as they stepped over her. I didn't shout, but the next morning they found this on the table and went pale. They tell you kids remember the big things. The first day of school, the first time they ride a bike, the first time someone breaks their heart and you can't fix it with a Band-Aid and a cartoon. I used to think birthdays were the safe kind of big thing, the kind you can control if you try hard enough. Balloons, cake, a cheap plastic crown that somehow becomes sacred. One day where the world is supposed to look at your kid and say, "You matter." My daughter Emma had been counting down to turning 8 like it was a space launch. She didn't want a circus. She didn't want a crowd. She wanted it simple. Her best friend Zoe and family, and a day that didn't get swallowed by someone else's noise. I built the whole afternoon around that. The living room looked like a pastel storm had moved in and decided to rent. Streamers, balloons, a banner that said, "Happy 8th birthday, Emma." The cake on the counter like a promise. Vanilla with strawberry filling, pink frosting, her name spelled out in fancy letters. By noon, people started trickling in. Not a flood. Just the usual handful of relatives who show up for family obligations and free cake. My aunt arrived first, the one who always smells like perfume and opinions. She kissed Emma's cheek and said, "8 already," like Emma had personally sped up time to inconvenience her. My uncle followed, holding a gift bag and looking around my house the way people look at hotel rooms, curious, evaluating, like they're deciding whether the mattress is worth the price. A couple cousins came too, smiling, chatting, doing the social script. One of them immediately started filming little clips of Emma opening presents. Not malicious, just modern. Like childhood is only real if it gets archived. Mom and Dad were there, of course. They live with us. They were in their usual mode. Mom fluttering around like she was the host of a daytime show. Dad planted in a chair with that "I'm here, therefore I'm helpful" posture. My brother Ethan was there too, lounging like he belonged to the house in the same way a cat belongs to a windowsill. Comfortable, certain, waiting for attention without technically asking for it. Zoe arrived with her mother. Zoe and Emma disappeared into the orbit of each other immediately, as if gravity did the introductions. For a while, it worked. Emma was bright-eyed, bouncing between guests and the cake table, keeping one hand on her crown like it might blow away. She was so careful with her happiness it made me ache. When it was time, I carried the cake into the living room, candles ready, lighter in my hand. Emma and Zoe sat on the couch, knees tucked under them, waiting like this was the main event. This was the moment. And then Ethan stood up. "Before we do that," he said. Not loud at first, just enough to cut through the room. I felt my stomach drop, because I know that tone. The "I'm about to redirect the spotlight" tone. The tone that comes from someone who's never been told no and has no reason to start believing in it now. Mom and Dad's faces were already set, smiling, ready, like they'd been rehearsing. Ethan held up his phone like evidence. "I got into Harvard." The room erupted the way it always does when Ethan says something. People clapped. My aunt gasped. Someone actually squealed. Dad slapped Ethan's back and said, "That's my boy," like Ethan had just carried a wounded soldier off a battlefield. And then Mom produced a second cake. A real one. Not a last-minute grocery store sheet cake. White frosting. Crimson letters. "Congrats, Ethan." Dad pulled out a banner. Harvard colors, stars, his name. It unfurled right over the edge of Emma's decorations, like it had been waiting to replace them. It was so planned it was almost impressive, if it hadn't been happening on my child's birthday. Emma's face shifted. Not a tantrum, not dramatic, just quiet. I was still holding the lighter. Emma's candles were still unlit. Around Ethan, adults swarmed. "When do you leave? Did you apply early? What are you studying? You must be so proud," someone told my mother, as if Emma didn't exist 6 feet away in a crown. Ethan stood in the middle of it, soaking it up, smiling that easy smile people get when praise has never been rationed. And then the front door opened again. More voices. Louder. Younger. Ethan's friends poured into my living room like they'd been invited personally by the concept of Harvard. One of them came in carrying a speaker. Another had a paper bag that clinked, and the sound made my jaw tighten because no good decision has ever announced itself with clinking glass at a child's party. "Harvard man!" someone yelled. Music started. Bass heavy. Too loud for a living room with balloons and an 8-year-old. Cups appeared. Bottles appeared. Somebody popped something open with that sharp hiss that does not belong next to pink frosting. And my parents? Let it happen. Mom laughed. Actually laughed, and waved her hand like she was blessing a ceremony. Let them celebrate. It's Harvard. Emma's cake got nudged aside to make room for drinks. My table became Ethan's congratulatory bar. The room was moving around him like he had his own weather system. Somebody, an aunt, one of the cousins, someone who had already mentally reassigned me to helper, asked, "Natalie, can you grab more plates?" I looked at Emma. Her shoulders had dropped. Her crown had tilted. She was staring at the unlit candles like she was trying to understand why the room had forgotten the script. I didn't want to start shouting. Not in front of her, not in front of Zoe. So I nodded, like a trained animal. "Sure," I said. I walked into the kitchen because it was either that or break something. The music thumped through the walls. Laughter rose and fell. I grabbed the plates, stared at them for a second, took a breath. Don't make it worse for Emma, I told myself. Don't turn her birthday into a fight she'll remember. I picked up the stack and walked back in, and that's when I saw it. Emma's cake was on the floor. Not the whole thing, but enough. Pink frosting smeared across the hardwood like someone had wiped paint. And Emma was on her knees, in her birthday dress, crown still on her head, rubbing frosting off the floor with a paper towel like she'd been assigned the job. Her hands were shaking. Her mouth was tight. Her eyes were wet in that way kids get when they're trying not to embarrass themselves by crying. Adults stepped around her like she was furniture. I stopped so hard my breath caught. "Emma," I said, and my voice came out too soft, like I didn't want to scare her. She looked up at me, tears clinging to her lashes. "They told me to clean it," she whispered. Behind her, someone chuckled. A voice said, bright and casual, "It's good for kids. Teaches responsibility." I stared at the adults standing over my child. My parents chatting nearby like this was normal. Ethan's friends holding drinks like they were at a tailgate. And something inside me went quiet. Not calm. Not forgiving. Just done. I put the plates down. I crouched next to Emma, took the paper towel out of her hand, and wiped the frosting myself in one slow swipe. "No," I said. Not loud, but firm. "Not you." Emma's chin quivered. She tried to hold it in and couldn't. I helped her stand, wiped her hands, pulled her into me. "Come on," I said softly. "You and Zoe. Bedroom." Zoe followed without a word. Her mother hovered at the edge of the room, looking like she wanted to say something and couldn't find a polite version. In Emma's room, the girls sat on the bed, silent, like someone had stolen the language out of them. I tried to salvage a fragment. I found a small candle, stuck it into a cupcake, lit it, and sang "Happy Birthday" quietly like a secret. Emma blew it out without smiling. In the living room, the bass kept pounding. Ethan's name got shouted again, like a chant. Zoe's mother appeared in the doorway, her face tight in that careful, diplomatic way adults get when they're trying not to insult someone's family while actively witnessing them behave like trash. "Hey," she said softly, "I think we should go. It's getting a little intense." It was early afternoon, but I understood. This wasn't about time. This was about safety. Zoe looked confused. Emma's eyes filled again. Then Zoe and her mother left. Emma watched the door close and something inside her cracked. "I don't have anyone," she whispered. "You have me," I said immediately, pulling her into my chest. She cried into my shirt like she was trying to fold herself back into safety. I held her until the shaking stopped. When she finally fell into an exhausted sleep, I tucked her in and left her room like I was walking out of a hospital. The house was still loud, still celebrating. I walked into the living room and tried, twice, to get anyone's attention, to say something, to demand something. Nobody cared. I got waved off with laughter and "Don't be dramatic," and "It's Harvard," and one particularly smug, "Don't be a party pooper." So I walked away. I didn't shout. Not then. But the next morning, they found something on the kitchen table and went pale. It would be easier if I could say that night came out of nowhere, that Ethan was usually respectful, that my parents were usually normal grandparents, that this was a freak event caused by excitement and bad judgment. But nothing in my life with them has ever been a freak event. It's always been a pattern. A long, exhausting pattern where the rules bend for Ethan and snap for me. Ethan is 8 years younger than I am, which means when he was born, I was old enough to remember exactly what life looked like before him and how fast it changed after. I don't have a dramatic story of being screamed at or locked in closets. It was quieter than that. It was the look my mom got when she thought I couldn't see it. That flash of, "Ugh, you again," when I needed something. I was the accident, the interruption, the reason my parents had to settle down earlier than they wanted. They never said it out loud in one clean sentence. They didn't have to. Kids are excellent at reading tone. Then Ethan came along, and suddenly my parents acted like babies were the best thing they'd ever invented. They were excited. They were proud. They were affectionate in a way that always felt slightly theatrical, like they wanted an audience. And because I was 8, and because adults love turning oldest daughters into unpaid employees, I became part of the Ethan support team. "Watch him for a minute," my mom would say, and the minute would become hours. "Be patient," my dad would say. "You're older." I changed diapers before I learned long division. I made snacks. I watched cartoons I hated because Ethan liked them. I learned early that the easiest way to survive was to be useful. In school, I did well. Really well. Almost straight A's without trying to be flashy about it. I liked learning. I liked the feeling of being good at something that was mine. I talked about college like it was a door I could walk through. My parents treated that door like a trap. "College is expensive," Mom would say. "It's a waste of money." Dad would shrug like education was a hobby. "Be practical. You'll end up in debt." And because I was a teenager who wanted approval, I tried to fit inside the version of life they approved of. Focus on family. Don't get too ambitious. Don't make plans that require them to show up. Then Ethan hit his teens, and suddenly my parents discovered the concept of investing in a child. Tutors, programs, prep books, long conversations about his future. They talked about his education like it was a sacred mission. I remember standing in the kitchen once, years ago, watching my mom fill out paperwork for one of Ethan's tutoring programs and feeling something in my chest twist. "Why didn't you do that for me?" I asked. Mom didn't even look up. "It's different." "How?" I said. "I had better grades than Ethan. I had almost straight A's." She finally looked at me like I'd made a social mistake. "You weren't as talented." I laughed because it was either laugh or scream. That's not true, I said. Dad stepped in with the classic parental escape hatch. We didn't have the money back then. It would have almost worked if they weren't currently spending money they didn't have on Ethan's success. When I was 16, I started dating Grant. Grant was the son of family friends, the kind of family friends my parents treated like royalty. They loved Grant before I did. They loved that he was polite, that he said yes ma'am, that he came from a family with the right vibe. They encouraged it. A lot. At 16, I thought that meant they cared. I thought it meant I'd finally done something right. At 18, I got pregnant. Grant disappeared like someone hit delete. No long conversation. No dramatic goodbye. He just vanished. Like it wasn't his problem. And my parents, who had praised him like he was a future senator, turned on me so fast it gave me whiplash. They blamed me for ruining everything, for throwing away a good thing, for getting pregnant too early, as if pregnancy was something I did alone in my room like a craft project. They never once said, he failed you. They said, you failed. Grant went off to pursue his education and his future. I stayed home with a baby and the kind of exhaustion that makes your bones feel heavy. I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. I had a child who needed food and diapers and a mother who didn't collapse. So I ground my way through it. I was good with computers. Always had been. I taught myself things late at night while Emma slept. I took work I could do from home. I did tasks, projects, whatever came my way. There were nights I worked until sunrise with one ear tuned to Emma's breathing, terrified she'd wake up and I'd have nothing left to give. Eventually, it started to work. Not rich work, not influencer work. Just stable. Stable enough to breathe. Stable enough to stop begging life for mercy. Stable enough to buy a house. Years later, my parents' business went under. I never got a clean explanation. Just vague talk about bad luck and hard times and decisions that somehow happened to them, not because of them. They needed somewhere to go. It was supposed to be temporary. Ethan was underage then. He came too. 2 years passed. They never left. They didn't contribute. Not rent, not bills, not groceries. They settled in like my home was an extension of their entitlement. And somewhere along the way, the expectation quietly formed. I would pay for Ethan's future the way I'd always been expected to. Tuition, deposits, housing, whatever university required. Because I had money now, because I was family, because Ethan was the investment. So when I watched Emma on her knees cleaning frosting off the floor, it didn't feel like one ruined birthday. It felt like a warning. Emma didn't sleep that night. Not really. She lay in her bed staring at the dark, eyes open, body still, like she'd become a statue. I sat on the edge of her mattress and tried to offer her solutions, because that's what adults do when kids hurt. We want to fix it fast. We want to erase the pain so we don't have to sit in it. We can celebrate again, I said softly. We can do something special. I can book something. Emma turned her face away. No, she whispered, like the word cost her. It won't be the same, I said, trying to sound calm even though my chest felt like it was being squeezed. She didn't answer. She just blinked slowly, the way people do when they're trying not to cry. After a long silence, she said, "Can I just be alone?" My throat tightened. "Yeah," I said. "Of course." I stood, smoothed her blanket, kissed her forehead. She didn't move. I walked out of her room and closed the door gently. In the hallway, the house felt different. Not loud anymore, but not peaceful either, like the air had been poisoned and was waiting to settle. I went into my room and sat on the bed for a minute, hands in my lap, staring at the wall like it might tell me what to do next. Then Emma's voice echoed in my head, small, quiet, honest. They don't care about me. I hadn't taught her those words. She'd learned them by watching. And that was the part that snapped something in me. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Something sharper. I went to my computer. The printer whirred in the quiet like it was the only honest sound in the house. I printed 3 notices. Neat, clear, 30 days, Mom, Dad, Ethan. I stacked them carefully, placed them on the kitchen table like I was setting out place cards for a dinner party. Then I went back to my room, shut the door, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling until sleep finally took me. Sometime in the morning, I woke up to shouting. Not the muffled kind, the full volume kind. Mom's voice, sharp and high. Dad's lower rumble. Ethan's angry edge. I lay there for a second listening, and I hated the feeling that rose in my chest. Satisfaction. Not joy. Not pride. Just a small, guilty sense of, finally. Then someone banged on my door. "Natalie!" Mom hissed, like she was trying to keep her rage from waking the whole house and failing. I opened the door. Mom was standing there waving paper in her hand. Dad loomed behind her, jaw tight. Ethan stood a little back, eyes wide like he couldn't decide if he was furious or scared. "What is this?" Mom snapped. I looked at the paper, then at her face. "Keep your voice down," I said evenly. "Emma's sleeping." Mom's eyes flashed. "Are you serious right now?" "Yes," I said. "I'm serious right now." Dad stepped forward. "You can't be serious about this." Mom shoved the paper toward me. "You're kicking your family out?" I held her gaze. "Emma is my family." Ethan made a sound like a laugh, but it came out wrong. "This is insane." Mom's voice shook. "We live here. Where are we supposed to go?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. Calm is louder than screaming when someone is expecting you to fold. "This is my house," I said. "And Emma's house. You're going to live somewhere else." Mom stared at me like she was waiting for me to blink and apologize. Dad tried a different angle. "Is this about last night? Natalie, it was a celebration." "It was my daughter's birthday," I said. Ethan scoffed. "Oh, wow. You're really doing this because of a party?" I didn't flinch. "Emma cried herself to sleep." Mom's mouth tightened. "You're jealous," she said. And it was almost funny how fast she reached for that. "You're jealous because Ethan is successful." I let out a short laugh that wasn't happy. My 8-year-old was on her knees cleaning frosting off the floor while people stepped over her, I said. "And you want to talk to me about jealousy?" Mom opened her mouth, then snapped it shut, then opened it again like she was buffering. "It's frosting," she spat finally. "It was her birthday," I said back. Ethan stepped forward. "She only had one friend over," he said, voice rising. "It wasn't even a real party. You're making a big deal out of nothing." Dad nodded like that made sense. "Birthdays happen every year," he added, like he was offering wisdom. "And Harvard happens once," Mom finished triumphantly. I stared at them, and the bleakness of it almost made me dizzy. "You could have celebrated any other day," I said quietly. "Any day. You chose hers." Mom's face reddened. "You're overreacting." I didn't argue. I didn't list every time they'd chosen Ethan. I didn't unpack the whole history in the hallway like a suitcase. I just pointed at the paper in her hand. "You have 30 days, I said. "All 3 of you." Mom's eyes went wild. "You can't do this." "I can," I said. "And I am." Dad tried to step into the doorway like he could physically block reality. "Come on, we're family." I held his gaze. "Then act like it." Then Emma stepped out, hair messy, face pale. "What's going on?" she asked, voice small. I turned instantly, my face softening like flipping a switch. "Nothing, baby. I said. Everything's okay. Emma blinked at the angry adults, then looked at me. Her eyes asked a question she didn't have words for. I walked to her, knelt, and smoothed her hair back. We're just talking, I said gently. Go back to bed, okay? She nodded, slowly, and disappeared back into her room. I stood, turned back to them, and repeated, steady and clear, 30 days. Something shifted. I saw it in their faces. The moment they realized I wasn't bluffing, that this wasn't a tantrum I'd apologize for later. Mom's mouth tightened. Dad looked away. Ethan's eyes hardened. They retreated without another word. In the days after, the house turned into a refrigerator. Not temperature-wise, emotion-wise. Everyone moved around each other like ghosts. Doors closed softly but with meaning. Cups got left on counters like tiny acts of war. Mom would sigh loudly when I walked into a room. Dad would stare through me like I was a stranger renting space. Ethan stayed mostly in his room, coming out only when he wanted food or an audience. I kept my routine. I got Emma ready for school. I packed her lunch. I smiled like I wasn't carrying a brick in my chest. I didn't let Emma wander into the adult tension. If she asked questions, I answered with calm, age-appropriate truth, and then redirected her to homework or cartoons or Zoe's latest dramatic playground story. In quiet moments, I started planning a redo birthday, something real, something safe, something that belonged to Emma, not to Ethan's ego. Then the calls started. Relatives I barely spoke to suddenly had my number. "You're kicking your family out?" one aunt demanded, like she'd caught me committing a crime. "You're making them homeless," someone else said. "How could you?" I didn't argue. I just told the truth. I described Emma's face, the frosting, the booze and the loud music, and my 8-year-old scrubbing the floor like she was staff. The line went quiet. "Oh," someone said finally, smaller, less righteous. And after that, the calls changed tone. People didn't apologize exactly, but the outrage drained out of them like someone pulled a plug. It was amazing how quickly family loyalty turned into awkward silence once the story involved an actual child. A week into the Cold War, I thought maybe that was the worst of it. Then there was another knock at my door. Mom and Dad stood there, tight-faced, eyes sharp. Dad spoke first, voice strained. "What happened to the money?" I stared at him. "What money?" Mom's hands were shaking. "We're trying to make the payment," she snapped. "Tuition deposit, housing deposit. We can't even log in. It's gone." I felt the calm settle in my bones like it had been waiting. "Oh," I said. "That." Mom's eyes widened. "Natalie, don't play games." I didn't. "That was my money," I said plainly. Dad's jaw clenched. "You said you'd help." "I was considering it," I said, "before you turned my daughter's birthday into a Harvard keg pregame." Mom's face twisted. "This is Harvard," she hissed, like the word itself should scare me into obedience. "Do you understand how expensive that is?" "I do," I said. "Which is why it's wild you assumed it was my responsibility." Dad's voice rose. "Natalie." I cut him off, still calm. "The account is in my name. You had temporary access because you expected me to pay. I removed your access. I moved the money back." Mom stared at me like she was trying to process a language she didn't speak. "You can't do that," she said, voice cracking. "I just did," I said. Her face went red. "We're going to be homeless." "You still have 23 days left," I reminded her. "Homeless is dramatic." Dad stepped forward. "You're ruining his future." "No," I said. "I'm refusing to fund it." Mom's voice went shrill. "He's your brother." "And Emma is my daughter," I said, and my voice finally sharpened. You made that very clear. Which one of those matters to you? They stared at me like I'd slapped them. You can't do this to an 18-year-old, Dad said. He can get loans, I said. He can work. He can apply for scholarships. He can figure it out. Mom's mouth fell open. Figure it out? He shouldn't have to. I almost laughed. Funny, that's what you told me. They stormed away in fury, slamming doors like punctuation. Emma was at school, thankfully. She didn't have to watch that one. That evening, Ethan came home. He didn't swagger. He didn't smirk. He looked shaken, like someone had unplugged the world he thought was guaranteed. He stood in the kitchen, hands in his hoodie pocket, eyes flicking toward me like he was nervous. Hey, he said. I didn't respond right away. I just kept washing a mug slowly, like I had all the time in the world. Ethan cleared his throat. Mom and Dad said you took the money. I did, I said. He swallowed. Natalie, I'm 18. How am I supposed to pay for college? I looked at him. Really looked. For the first time in his life, Ethan looked scared. The fees are insane, he whispered. Deposits, housing. It's Harvard. I know, I said. He took a step closer. I was kind of hoping you'd help me. You're my sister. You've always been there. There was something almost tender in the way he said it, like he believed it, like my role in his life was a natural law. He rushed on, softer now. And look, the party. I get it was messed up. It was my parents. They organized it. They pushed it. I didn't think... it's a kid's birthday, I know. That was... Yeah. He looked down. People make mistakes. I didn't yell. I didn't punish him with a speech. I didn't even say I forgave him or didn't forgive him. I just said simply, I'm not paying. Ethan's face fell. But you can get a job, I said. Part-time. You can apply for aid, scholarships, loans. You can figure it out. He stared at me like I'd suggested he climb Everest barefoot. I've never... He started, then stopped. I know, I said quietly. His voice cracked, just a little. You're really doing this? Yes, I said. He stood there, frozen, like he was waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. Finally, he backed away. Okay, he muttered. Then he left the kitchen with the kind of slow, defeated walk that makes you realize how much a person has always been carried. A few days later, Mom and Dad came at me with what they thought was the final weapon, the ultimatum. Mom stood in the hallway, arms crossed, eyes hard. We can figure out living arrangements, she said stiffly, like she was offering a compromise she didn't mean. If that's your issue. Dad nodded. We'll leave if you want. We'll work something out. Then Mom leaned forward, voice low and sharp. But you have to pay for Ethan. There it was. Clean. Clear. Not please. Not help. Have to. If you don't, she said, lips curling, then we're done. We're not your parents anymore. We want nothing to do with you. I stared at her. And the strangest thing happened. I didn't feel panic. I felt clarity, because right then, in that one sentence, she proved exactly what Emma had whispered the night of her birthday. They didn't care about their granddaughter enough to protect her. They cared about their son's status enough to sacrifice anyone. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said. Mom blinked. Okay? I'm not paying, I said. And if cutting me off is what you need to do to feel righteous about it, go ahead. Dad's face tightened. Natalie. No, I said, calm again. I'm done. Mom stared at me like she expected me to collapse. I didn't. And somewhere behind her, in the quiet of the house, I imagined Emma's crown slipping off her head and being replaced by something better. Safety. A year later, Emma turned 9. We did a small birthday at home. Cake, candles, a few kids, the people who actually show up. Emma was happy. I was calm. The house felt like ours again. That's the update on us. Now the part everyone asks about. I haven't spoken to my parents since the day they left, but I still have cousins, and cousins love 2 things: group chats and disaster updates. From what I've heard, my parents ended up in a cheap rental across town. The kind with thin walls, bad carpet, and neighbors who also have temporary setbacks. They went back to work. Both of them. Long hours. Zero pride. And whatever savings they had? Gone. Burned trying to keep Ethan's Harvard story alive just a little longer. Which brings me to Ethan. Yes, he got into Harvard. My parents treated that acceptance like it came with a personality transplant and a guaranteed career. Then the first semester happened. Turns out Harvard doesn't care how many tutors you had. It still expects you to show up, keep up, and survive without someone rewriting your life for you. Ethan tried. Kind of. He took out loans and picked up jobs, but he'd never learned how to do work and study at the same time, because back home, work was something other people did for him. He started skipping classes, then shifts, then deadlines. My parents kept covering, kept paying, kept insisting he was adjusting. By the end of the year, he dropped out. And here's the part that's almost poetic. The last I heard, all 3 of them were still living together in that same cheap rental. My parents working themselves tired, still financing Ethan's existence, while Ethan spends most of his days on the couch watching TV, taking time off, waiting for motivation to fall out of the ceiling. Meanwhile, at my house, my money stays in my account, my stress stays low, and my daughter doesn't scrub anyone's mess off the floor on her birthday. I don't question kicking my parents out. Not once. The only thing I still wonder sometimes, late at night, when my brain gets dramatic, is Ethan. He was 18. Was refusing to pay the tuition the right call? Did I go too far, or not far enough? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more. At my grandma's birthday, my 14-year-old nephew poured Coke into my lap and shouted, "You don't belong here!" My family laughed. I didn't cry or beg. That night, I pulled my name from my brother's credit line. 2 weeks later, his whole empire began to fall. My name is Rachel. For most of my life in my family, I've been the poor relative, the handy extra adult, the emergency ATM, the person you call when you need a signature, a babysitter, or someone to listen to you complain about your stress from living in a 3-bedroom condo you didn't pay for. We're in Ohio, in a mid-sized city where everyone knows everyone else's business, especially if that business includes drama. My older brother, Mike Miller, is the golden boy, or as my dad used to say, the project that never ends. My mom worships Mike's son, Tyler, 14 years old, gifted, special, almost a genius, if you believe Grandma. And she does, loudly. Me? I run a small boutique in a strip mall. I sell clothes, jewelry, a little home decor. Nothing fancy, just honest work. I had a daughter once, too. 6 months in pediatric oncology, nights on a plastic chair, hope and terror trading places every hour. Then a funeral. Then an empty bedroom. After that, I walked around in a fog. People told me God takes the best, and that I should hurry up and have another baby. A handful of relatives just sat with me in silence, brought me soup, and didn't try to fix anything. I remember them. Everyone else, I remember for different reasons. About 6 months after the funeral, Mike came to me with papers. "Rach, I just need you to co-sign a business credit line," he said. "The store's about to take off. Mom's worried. You know how she gets. Just help me get this going, and I'll handle the rest." I didn't read the forms. I just signed where the bank manager pointed. I wanted him out of my apartment so I could go back to my grief in peace. I didn't realize I'd just given him a loaded safety net with my name strapped to it. For more than a year, I paid on time. Or rather, Mike paid on time, with my credit holding everything up. Mom called me a good sister when it suited her. The rest of the time, at family dinners, I was the one they joked about. Rachel and her little shop. Grandma Gail's birthdays had turned into one-man shows starring Tyler. More attention on him than on her or her supermarket cakes combined. Usually, I'd show up, hand over a gift, survive the required small talk, and escape as soon as it was socially acceptable. This year, the invitation itself felt wrong. "Rachel, honey, you have to come," my mom cooed over the phone. "Tyler keeps asking if you'll be there." That alone should have made me claim the flu. Tyler only remembered I existed when he wanted something. Last time he'd been extra sweet, he spent an entire evening complimenting my cooking, then hinted loudly about how cool it would be to have a gaming chair. I bought it. 2 weeks later, a cousin's kid told me Tyler was bragging in the courtyard that I tried to be a mom and failed. His exact phrasing. When I complained to Mike, he shrugged. "Teenage phase. He's pushing boundaries." So no, I wasn't expecting warmth, but I still went, because despite everything, I kept showing up. When I arrived at Mike and Olivia's 3-bedroom condo, the place was chaos. Balloons, 2 store-bought cakes with frosting roses, half-opened presents everywhere. Tyler was holding court with some girl, bragging that Grandma was going to buy him a car when he turned 16. My mom laughed like he'd just done stand-up on national TV. No one noticed I'd come in. I had to cough loudly and wave before someone finally pointed, without enthusiasm, at an empty chair. My gift, a necklace of amber-colored beads I'd spent an hour choosing, sat in its box all night, unopened. Mom was too busy telling anyone who would listen how Tyler's homeroom teacher wanted him moved into a special gifted program. Not just smart, practically a genius, you know? No one asked how my store was doing. No one mentioned the charity fair I'd organized at the mall 2 weeks earlier. We'd raised enough to cover a month of therapy sessions for parents at the pediatric oncology ward. But I was a blank space to them. A convenient contrast to point at, just to feel superior. They sat me between 2 strangers. One man had a beer can in each hand. The other dropped his fork, picked up mine without asking, and kept eating. I let it go. I'd been letting things go for years. And then Tyler stood up from the table with a full glass of Coke. He walked toward me like he was just passing by, looked me straight in the face.
"Grandma says there's no place for you here,"
he shouted. Then he poured the entire glass into my lap. Ice-cold, syrupy soda soaked my skirt. My legs went sticky in seconds. The table roared. My mom turned to her friend and said something like, "Tyler just says what he really thinks." Mike actually clapped. I dabbed at my legs with napkins while they laughed harder. I smiled. Calm. No reaction. No scene. I sat there like I didn't feel humiliated at all. After months in a hospital, holding my daughter while she faded, after watching monitors flatline and packing up tiny clothes that would never be worn again. A teenage stunt with Coke felt so stupid, so small. And that's exactly why it was the last straw. Because they knew my grief. And even knowing that, they still saw me as a target, a prop for their jokes. Something flipped inside me. Not anger, not even rage, just crystal clarity. They didn't want me there. They never had. And now, they'd spelled it out so clearly that even I couldn't pretend anymore. I waited 5 more minutes, apologized politely, said I had to leave early. No big deal. Drove home, opened my laptop, and remembered the credit line I'd co-signed for my brother. That night, I emailed the bank and revoked my guarantee, asked to have my name removed from his credit line. The system froze his accounts automatically, Mike found out the next morning when the bank called, and at 7:45 a.m., a tow truck sat under their bedroom window, hauling away the Camry he'd leased 3 months earlier, also with my name on the line. At 8 o'clock on the dot, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Mike on my porch, with that familiar blend of fake concern and real panic I'd seen every time he blew up his own life. Only now, Mom wasn't next to him with a rescue check, and I wasn't in the mood to pretend everything would magically work out. He didn't even say hello.
You have to fix this. Now.
No, good morning. No mention of the coke. No hint that the whole table had laughed at me like I was some hired clown. He shoved a stack of papers at me.
They froze the line.
The bank says the guarantor backed out. If I don't find someone else, everything crashes. I can't cover the lease at Westview Mall. The credit cards are maxed. I can't pay my employees. Mom's health insurance is expiring. Tyler's soccer club fee is due next week. I leaned my shoulder against the doorframe. Didn't say a word. His voice changed. Got sharper.
You're doing this over a stupid joke? Seriously, Rachel?
There it was. Not cruelty. Not humiliation. A stupid joke. I closed the door in his face. 5 minutes later, my phone lit up like a slot machine. First Mike, then his wife, Olivia, then Mom. Guilt, confusion, threats. They each tried their favorite angle. Tyler sent a meme video, some influencer fake crying dramatically. No text, just the clip. By evening, there was a new surprise waiting for me in the parking lot. I stayed late at the shop doing inventory. When I finally stepped out, it was dark and quiet. Just my car under the streetlight and a couple of trash cans. Keys in one hand, grocery bag in the other. My car looked wrong. Both sides were keyed down to the metal. The side mirror lay on the pavement. The back window was a spider web of cracks, hit with something heavy. I just stood there, scanning the empty lot. No one around. Just silence and that weird feeling, like the air itself was waiting for me to explode. I didn't call Mike. I didn't call my mom. I didn't scream or cry or fall apart. I went back into the shop, pulled up the security footage, and hit rewind. There they were, Tyler and one of his buddies, hoodies up, laughing their heads off. One filming on his phone. Tyler walking up to my car, spraying "loser" in red across the side, posing like he'd just dropped a rap album. For the grand finale, he kicked a flower pot off the shop steps. I didn't even blink. I called the only sane person in our family snake pit, my Uncle Ron. He drove over like the building was on fire. We watched the video together in the back office. When it ended, he leaned back in his chair, looked at me, and said,
Call the police.
No discussion. He stayed while I gave my statement. The patrol officer was polite but thorough.
This isn't the first complaint about Tyler Miller,
he said, flipping through his tablet.
We've had reports from school, property damage, trespassing. So far, he's dodged any real consequences. With this video, that's going to be harder.
The next morning, Mike showed up again. This time, he didn't try the front door. He paced the sidewalk across the street from my house, phone to his ear, calling me over and over while wearing a trench into my block. When he finally realized I wasn't coming out, he started yelling. I couldn't catch every word through the window, but a few floated up clearly.
Traitor. Heartless. You'll regret this.
Later, Mom left a voicemail. Her voice was tight and tearful, like she was auditioning for a daytime drama.
I don't know what's gotten into you, Rachel. Making this kind of fuss over money? You're really going to destroy our family over a childish prank?
They still didn't get it. None of them did. It wasn't about the coke, or the broken glass, or even the money. It was about years of being treated like the poor relation they tolerated, not loved, used, not valued. slowly squeezed out until I was just the extra chair in the corner. They thought, if she isn't exploding, she isn't noticing. They thought I'd bend. Instead, I watched their perfect little world start to crack, and I was just getting started. A few days later, formal charges came through: vandalism, criminal mischief, trespassing. Because Tyler was still under 16, a juvenile officer got involved. Mike and Olivia were called into the station. With the video, there wasn't much to deny. Everything was there. The smirks, the spray paint, the posing for the camera. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like I'd won. I opened my store like it was any other day, swept concrete dust off the steps, and went back to work. The phone started buzzing. Customers told me Mike was making the rounds, saying I'd faked the footage, edited everything to frame his sweet boy. My mom visited one of my suppliers to warn them that my nerves were acting up again, like after the tragedy with my daughter. I didn't take the bait. Instead, I sat down and made a list of every thread tying us together. Every stupid favor and signature I'd thrown around like confetti. It was longer than I'd expected. After the credit line for his main store, there was the sublease for Olivia's kiosk at Riverfront Plaza downtown. I was the guarantor there too. Then the merchant accounts for her online store on Amazon. The POS system, the payment processing, little side deals I'd barely noticed at the time. All under my name. My mistake. I'd given too much, trusted too easily. Now I was taking it back. By the end of the week, I'd severed every financial tie, canceled merchant accounts, revoked power of attorney, sent letters to the IRS and state tax office asking that my information be removed from any business registrations tied to their LLCS. They couldn't accept a single payment without going through reviews they weren't prepared for. Methodical, cold, efficient. Olivia's Amazon storefront was suspended within 48 hours. The mall terminated Mike's sublease. A bright notice went up on the kiosk. Closed. Lease terminated. Mike called nonstop. Left voice notes that slid from begging to threats with whiplash speed. By the end, he was almost crying. Mom called too. Very different tone. You're tearing this family apart. Your father would never have wanted this. Funny. Dad was the only one who ever treated me like a person instead of a backup plan, and that's when it hit me. They thought everything they'd built was theirs, that I was lucky just to be nearby. The truth was, it had all been resting on me, my effort, my signature, my reputation, my risk. They never valued it because acknowledging it would mean admitting I had power, and they hated the idea that I held something they couldn't control, so they snapped. One night I came home late. The shop window was shattered again. This time they didn't even try to hide. On the floor lay a brick with a note rubber banded around it. One line scribbled in all caps, "You'll die alone." I didn't get scared. I didn't even get mad. I picked up the brick, pinned the note to the backroom bulletin board, and called Uncle Ron again. By morning, he was back with a lawyer. "Criminal charges are good," the lawyer said. "But we're also filing a civil suit. Emotional distress, lost income, property damage, everything we can document. And we can document a lot." I didn't argue, didn't hesitate. This wasn't about a birthday party or Coke or broken glass anymore. It was about drawing a line, thick and permanent. They weren't family anymore, just people who happened to share my last name. The juvenile hearing for Tyler got scheduled first, then dates for the bigger case against Mike and Olivia for damages, fraud, and everything else their mess had spilled over into. I thought they'd panic quietly and finally shut up. Wrong. Late one night, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from an unknown number. I almost deleted it. Spam, probably, but something made me listen. A young, shaky voice said, "Hi, my name is Hannah. I worked for your brother at the mall kiosk, the one that closed. At first I didn't understand what was going on, but when I heard about the court case, some things clicked. She'd overheard Mike and Olivia talking a few weeks earlier. They were planning how to make me look crazy so no one would take me seriously. They talked about breaking another window to push me over the edge. I didn't get it then, she said. Now I do. I still have our messages. He asked me to buy spray paint and send him receipts. I'm tired of staying quiet. I called her back immediately. Her voice shook, but she didn't back down. I gave her my lawyer's contact info. She sent screenshots of everything. That same night, another woman messaged me. She'd helped Olivia with the online store. She'd seen fake invoices made out in my name, used to get better payment terms from suppliers, like I was a co-owner when I wasn't. They'd even processed a fake return once, claiming a shipment was defective, to get a refund using my good standing. I forwarded it all to Uncle Ron by morning. What had started as just vandalism turned into a full-blown case. Fraud, forgery, illegal use of personal data. The lawyer updated our claims in a few hours. They were not ready. I thought, okay, now they'll realize they've pushed too far. They'll crawl back, apologize, and vanish from my life. Sure. Instead, late that evening, I heard noise downstairs and checked the building camera from an app on my phone. Mike, Olivia, and my mom were standing in front of my shop window, just staring in, like they were waiting to be let in. Then Mike pulled out his phone and started a Facebook Live. I watched in real time from the apartment above the shop. He called me a parasite, said I was milking my daughter's death, that I loved playing the victim to squeeze money out of the family. According to him, 6 months in pediatric oncology, sleepless nights in a plastic chair, and an empty nursery were just part of my master plan to guilt them into helping me. He said I was trying to destroy the family, that I needed psychiatric help. My mom stood behind him, arms crossed, face like stone. Not a word. Not a single, "Hey, maybe don't do this." They had no idea I was watching. I didn't run downstairs. I didn't pound on the glass and scream. I called 911, sent the link to my lawyer. The stream disappeared an hour later, but someone had already screen recorded it and posted the video in a local community group called Family Drama in Riverside. Title: Business War in Real Time. The next day, people started coming into the store. Strangers, regular customers, curious neighbors. "Are you okay?" some asked. Others just bought something small and said, "Hang in there." I worked, smiled, wrapped purchases, all while my personal life burned in the background like a building I'd already decided not to re-enter. 2 days later, Mike and Olivia served me with a thick envelope. They were suing me. Fraud, slander, damages, the full dramatic package. Their lawyer said they were open to a friendly settlement if I agreed to keep everything private and avoid a public trial. I didn't answer. My lawyer did. They still didn't understand. This wasn't revenge. It was survival. And I wasn't the one who lit the match. The court date was set for Thursday at 9 a.m. I barely slept the night before. Not from nerves exactly, more from the sharp, wired desire to finally lay all the facts on the table, cut the last cords, and walk away. I got there early. Uncle Ron was already standing outside the Franklin County Courthouse, sipping coffee from a paper cup like we were there to contest a parking ticket. "Focus," was all he said as he handed me a copy of what our lawyer had filed the night before, the final version of the lawsuit with all attachments. 7 thick binders of evidence. Mike shuffled into the courtroom later, rumpled tie, bloodshot eyes, moving like gravity had tripled overnight. Olivia trailed behind him, mumbling to herself, glued to her phone like she could scroll her way out of reality. They sat 2 rows ahead of us, never looked back. My mom didn't show. Later, I saw photos someone posted online. That same morning, she was at a cafe patio, cackling with her friends over cappuccinos. Too sick and anxious for court, apparently. The judge, a woman around 50 with a stripe of gray in her hair, ran the hearings like a metronome, steady, precise, no extra drama. Our lawyer laid everything out, piece by piece. The security video of Tyler vandalizing my car, the Facebook Live recording, the fake invoices with my forged signature that Olivia had used with suppliers. Then came the witnesses, 3 former employees, 2 suppliers, and Hannah with her screenshots of Mike planning the second broken window. With each new document, Mike sank deeper into his seat. Olivia's hands shook as she flipped through her own copies, then gave up and just stared at the table. Our lawyer didn't just ask for reimbursement. He asked for emotional damages, lost profits, legal costs, the whole thing. Their lawyer tried to spin it as a family disagreement that got out of hand, said it should be resolved quietly without ruining people's lives financially. The judge wasn't buying it. She flipped through the transcript of the live stream, paused on certain lines, and looked over the screenshots. Then she said something I will never forget. If this is how your family resolves personal issues, I'm glad it became public record. We won. On every count. The court ordered Mike and Olivia to pay me a sum that made Olivia gasp out loud. Tyler was sentenced to community service, mandatory sessions with the school counselor, and written apologies, including one addressed to me. The apology hit my email a week later. The grammar was too perfect. I'm pretty sure my mom wrote it. I didn't respond. But what happened after court might have been even uglier than the trial itself. When I got home that day, the flower bed by my building entrance was destroyed. My mailbox was crushed. Someone had dumped food waste across my doormat. I sighed, swept everything up, installed another security camera by the entrance with a motion sensor, and filed another report. This time, the police didn't shrug. "We've got a pattern now," the officer said. "We'll add it to the case file." A few days later, I heard from a cousin who'd stayed neutral through all of it. He'd been at a distant relative's barbecue when my name came up. Mom told everyone I'd become a cold, bitter woman exploiting my tragedy for attention. Mike bragged that he wasn't done yet. I didn't answer the message. I just took a screenshot and saved it. And then something clicked in my head, and for the first time in years, I felt calm. They were falling apart. The stronger I got, the faster they crumbled. Meanwhile, my shop was doing better than ever. I launched a line of products from local makers, handmade jewelry, ceramics, natural skincare. Negotiated a deal with a regional organic supplier. Sales doubled in a month. I hired 2 more employees and rented a small storage unit for extra stock. I was exhausted, but it was the good kind, the kind that feels earned. I also made sure the right people knew about it. Not everyone, just the ones who'd called on birthdays without being prompted, who'd shown up at my daughter's funeral without having to be begged, the ones who'd simply sat next to me in the hospital waiting room and didn't say garbage like, "Everything happens for a reason," or "God only takes the best." I told them casually about the expansion, about a piece on my store in a local business magazine, about being shortlisted for an Entrepreneur of the Year award from the Chamber of Commerce. I knew the news would travel, and I knew it would eat at the people who'd spent years telling me I'd never survive without their approval, without their support, without the sacred Miller name. Now they were the ones outside the circle. And the scariest part for them? I was fine. Months passed. The cameras did their job. The locks held. That stretching wire of constant tension finally snapped, and for the first time in a long time, my head felt quiet. I didn't hear from Mike after court. Olivia scrubbed me from all her social media. Tyler vanished from the internet. Either he went private or he deleted everything. I heard about them the same way everyone else did, through other people. Mike tried to open another store. No one would co-sign for anything. His reputation wasn't loudly destroyed, but it was thoroughly soaked. Suppliers demanded payment up front. Landlords wanted triple deposits. They were stuck. The damage they'd tried to dump on me had circled back to them, to their names, their finances, their shiny image. And the best part? I hadn't rolled in the mud with them. Every step I took was within the law. Every form, every cancellation, every report. They flung filth. I handed everything to the judge. I thought that was my final act. I was wrong. There was one more scene left. It was a Sunday. The shop was closed. We'd just finished hosting a small women's entrepreneurship fair. Lots of laughter, good food, new contacts. My staff and I were cleaning up, sweeping confetti and crumbs from the floor. One of the girls paused by the window. "Miss Miller?" she said. "There was this woman outside a few minutes ago. She just stood there, looking in for a long time. I checked the camera. Thought you'd want to see." We rewound the footage together in the back. It was my mom. She stood on the sidewalk for at least 5 minutes, maybe more. She didn't knock, didn't try the door, just stared through the glass with the look of someone who expected to find a burned-out ruin and instead saw a garden in full bloom. She'd probably imagined boarded-up windows, going out of business signs, or me inside, broken, cornered, begging the universe for forgiveness. Instead, the camera showed people laughing as they finished cleaning after a big event. Shelves stocked with new collections. My employees joking with each other as they stacked boxes. The smooth rhythm of something that worked. A successful business that didn't have their fingerprints on it. She turned away eventually. Walked off. I didn't run after her. Didn't grab my phone with a sudden urge to call. I went back to wiping down glass shelves and double-checking the day's numbers. By then, her appearance meant about as much as the shadow of a random passerby at dusk. Here's the strange part. I don't hate them, this family that shares my last name. I don't miss the Sunday lunches where every spoonful of soup came seasoned with judgment, or the holidays where I brought a carefully wrapped gift and went home with leftovers of contempt. I live quietly now. Work hard, sleep at night. They said there was no place for me at that table. Fine. I built my own, and I decide who gets a seat. So tell me, was I too harsh, or did I finally draw the line where it should have been all along? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. So what do you think? Did she go too far or not far enough? Let her know in the comments, and subscribe for more.